Without further ado, I don't want to take any more of your time, Carey, and welcome and thank you for coming.
Well, thanks, Howard. Thanks for having me. Everybody should get to feel they get clapped when they go to work. Everybody should feel that. It's a wonderful feeling. How many of you, out of curiosity, have seen me here before? It's about a little less than half the room. Can we turn this down a little bit? There's a little feedback. I'm going to pace around a little bit, and I'm short, so I'm hoping eventually I'll come into your line of vision. And I mean, I'm not that short. My legs reach the ground. But anyway, just to tell you a little bit about myself, for those of you who haven't seen me before, my name is Carey Holzman. I've been professionally repairing computers since the early 90s, and I've worked at places like Intel and SRP and APS and Department of Environmental Quality. And because I worked for a contractor, they moved me around to a lot of those big companies. And eventually struck out on my own and have my own computer repair, sales, upgrade business out of Glendale, Arizona. One thing led to another. I ended up writing a book. So I was originally here in 2004 to promote the book, which I think they were just showing earlier. The book is, when you write a book on computers, it's not like a Stephen King novel. It's like a bunch of bananas. It becomes perishable over time and needs to be thrown away. So the book hasn't been updated. It's Windows 98, Millennium, and XP information. And I was going out to all the computer clubs then to promote that book. So that's how I first got introduced to Sun Lakes. And that led to me doing a nationwide radio show, which then led to me doing my own podcast and creating YouTube videos. And the YouTube videos are mostly, well, my specialty is showing people how to build a computer, where you can go and buy parts that specifically meet the needs of the end user and assemble it in a very easy to understand way, much like a cooking show. I don't get into too much detail as to why. In other words, when a cook is showing you how to make bread and they tell you to put the yeast in the flour and the water, and the yeast, the dough is going to rise, they don't explain the chemical process why that happens. Just that if it didn't rise, somewhere along the line you didn't follow the instructions just right. So in a similar fashion, I go through step by step the entire process of building a computer. It runs about 2 hours long on the video. The videos are all free, and the advantage of that is you can watch it at your own pace, rewind it, go back, see certain scenes over again. And I try to make things as clear as possible so that if you have that interest, but your concern is it's $1,000 worth of parts I'm risking, it really isn't. You may be risking an $80 part at any given time, but I guarantee you're not going to ruin the entire thing. And chances are, if you follow the easy steps that I show, you will be successful in building your own computer, which will probably not break, but if and when it does, or you want to upgrade it, you're going to know it like the back of your hand, and you won't be so afraid to work on it. Excuse me. So I'm trying to empower and encourage people to explore that if they so desire. And if the only thing that's holding them back is the fear of the unknown, I'm trying to just clear that. And in fact, that's sort of my goal altogether, is to provide you with information that in some cases will be factual and in some cases will be my opinion. However, in either case, I encourage you to decide on your own, not to take my word for anything, or for any other presenter, or any other advisor, friendly, or a family member, who's well-intentioned. But as a computer repair tech, I can tell you that friends and family with the best of intentions have pretty much bought my car. It doesn't make them bad people. But ultimately, what does matter is what you think. And the only way you're going to know what you think is when you try it and have your own experience. And so many people are afraid of that because they're afraid they're going to break the computer. A lot of people just, I just click this and I just click this and I just leave everything alone. And that's all right if that's what you're comfortable with. But if there's a part of you that wants to explore more, then what I'm going to discuss today are programs that are free and safe for you to try. And if you like them, you keep them. If you don't like them, you take them off. They won't hurt or harm your computer. And that way you can decide for yourself if you like something. Some people say, well, What antivirus do you like? Well, it doesn't matter what antivirus I like. I'll tell you. But it's the equivalent of asking a cook what his favorite dish is. It may not be your favorite dish, even though he's the professional cook and you're the amateur eater. Or it could be a professional eater. But either way, the cook's opinion really doesn't matter. You have to try it. But you don't want to try something that's going to poison you. So as long as you know what you're about to try is safe, then you can decide on your own if you like it or not, for any reason that you like anything. Now, one of the things I like to do, unlike the presenters that I'm accustomed to seeing when I belong to the Phoenix PC user group, is companies, and I don't know if they still do this, but companies used to send out representatives to come out and talk to you guys about pushing a product or a service. And they would often put up a PowerPoint presentation, dim the lights, and ask everybody to hold their questions to the end. And that's pretty much when I got up and walked out. Because I could just make a DVD and send it to you guys and save myself the trip. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. So people, often the officers of the club will say, well, what are you going to talk about? What do we tell our audience what you're going to discuss? I don't know what I'm going to discuss. That depends on you guys. So what I mean by that is I would like for you to participate by asking questions that are on your mind about technology. I don't know everything, but with Google I practically do. And often there may be other audience members who have the same question that you have, because every computer group's level is different. I don't know what your level is. So I want to encourage you, like I said, to participate. I think you'll enjoy the presentation either way, but if you participate, I think you'll enjoy it more. Now, with that said, I'm going to start things off by talking about what you've probably been sick of hearing by now, I would imagine, 7 days till the end of Windows XP. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean XP is going to stop working on April 9th? No. XP will continue to work just as Windows 98 still works today. However, if you tried to hook up a wireless network on Windows 98 or put TurboTax on it or antivirus or even get it hooked up to the internet, I think you'll find that to be quite a challenge. If you buy a printer or a scanner and you try and find a Windows 98 driver for it, I don't think you're going to find one. That will happen with XP, and it's already started to happen. In most cases, it's happened with Internet Explorer version 8, which is the latest version of Internet Explorer that's available for XP. XP will not install Internet Explorer 9, 10, or 11. Not for any technical reason, although Microsoft would have you believe that. It's a marketing reason. So they want you to go to Vista, 7, or 8. Now, it seems like every other operating system lately has been fumbled. Where 98 was good, Millennium was bad, 95 was good. I'm sorry, I got those out of order. 98 was good, Millennium was bad, XP was good, Vista was bad, 7 was good, and 8, well, depends who you ask. I'm not a fan of 8. I mean, I've got 8 on this laptop because I have to. I don't have a choice. I have to fix it. Actually, 8.1. Not that I can tell the difference really between the two. It doesn't really seem to be much of an improvement for a 4-hour upgrade process. But I digress. What happens when XP support ends is you have to understand that hackers are always trying to find ways into the computer that the programmers never considered. It's like using a tool like a screwdriver as a chisel. And then the screwdriver breaks. And so they have to redesign the screwdriver since they realize now people are using it as a chisel. They never thought anybody would use it as a chisel. And then somebody stabs somebody in the eye with it. And then they have to make a blunter end on it or make a wider end so that can't be. And so the screwdriver gets bigger and heavier and bulkier. And after a while, they have to start over and redesign the screwdriver from scratch. When you're dealing with programs with millions of lines of code, and Windows 7 has so many more millions of lines of code than XP, the potential for finding a loophole or an exploit grows exponentially. And so those updates that we keep talking about from Microsoft, those are there to patch those exploits. As of April 8th, Microsoft will no longer be issuing any new updates to Windows XP, which means any exploits that any hackers know and are not disclosing at this point could be initiated on April 9th. It also means that every day that passes, as more exploits are discovered, fewer exploits, this is a number that only grows bigger. It will never grow smaller, not without patches. As long as you're connected to the internet, you will continue to increase your risk for identity theft or virus infection each and every day. Now, when will it happen? I don't know. Sooner or later, you're going to buy a program like TurboTax or a piece of hardware like a printer or a scanner. And it's not going to happen on April 9th, but it will happen within a year, probably. It will not install on XP, and there won't be any, the company says Microsoft won't support it, we won't support it. Any computer running XP now should be replaced. You should not try to put Windows 7 on it. Not that you can't, you shouldn't. The computer wasn't designed for Windows 7. It was designed for XP. If I have a Yugo and I put a canoe on top, it's fine. But when I buy my yacht, I could probably tow it with the Yugo, but not very quickly and not very well. But it would get the job done. So bear all that in mind if you have XP. Out of curiosity, how many people here have XP? Yeah, quite a few of you. See, Microsoft really dropped the ball with XP in as far as the shareholders are concerned, because they used to come out with an operating system every 2 to 3 years. Ever since DOS, from DOS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Windows 3, well, Windows 1, 2, 3, 95, 98, 98 second edition, Millennium, XP, and then it stopped. And for 10 years, well, not 10 years, they pushed Vista out after about 7 years, after about twice the length of time. And so XP became really entrenched in the world on computers, and it's getting hard to twist people's arms to get them to let it go and to move on to Windows 7. But you have to understand how much technology has moved along that XP was never engineered for, because these technologies didn't exist. Wireless actually wireless networking didn't exist at all. USB 2 certainly didn't exist, let alone 3. SATA-based hard drives, the chipsets themselves and the controllers that are used to move data back and forth, well, they can make it work in XP, it just doesn't work as well. So there are advantages to going to a newer computer. And Windows 7 is not as drastic of a change. When you go from XP to 7, the learning curve isn't that bad. Going to 8 from XP, going to 8 from anything other than nothing, if your first operating system is Windows 8, then you don't know any better, so ignorance is bliss. But if you're trying to unlearn, then it's difficult. At least it seems to be that way for most people, including myself. So at the same time, it seems that Windows 8 does seem to run faster on the same computer that has Windows 7. So it's not that the whole thing's awful, but Microsoft has removed basically the start button where we find all of our programs. And in the 8.1 update, they gave us the start button back. But when you click on it, it brings you back to this tiled interface that everybody is complaining about, which is not a start menu. So in my opinion, what Microsoft did is they heard all these complaints from people going, we want our start button back, we want our start button back. So Microsoft put the start button back, which takes you back here. And if you ask me, that start button should not be shaped like little windows. It should be shaped like a big middle finger. Now there is a utility that's completely free. There's actually hundreds of these, but the one that I use, that I have experience with, what it does is well, first of all, with Windows 8.1, they give you the option to not boot to this screen anymore. This modern interface, they used to call the Metro interface, is the tiled interface. Let's give it 3 names, because that's what they did. And when we go to we can have it boot now directly to the desktop, okay? So this is what 8.1 lets you do. Now you have the option. Can you imagine having options? Huh. I think Burger King's known about that for some time. Anyway, the other issue is the start button. So this program I use is called Classic Shell. It is free, and it is from an open source community called SourceForge. They have thousands of free programs available. And you'll see when I click on my Start button now, it actually brings up a Start menu. Can you imagine? And now I can find my programs just like I always did in Windows 7, and Windows 8 isn't that hard to use anymore. Now, when I first started with computers, I used DOS. And when I used DOS, I would type in these arcane command line things that made sense to me because I was a computer guy. And when I saw Windows, I didn't like it because it dumbed it down. And that was the idea. The idea is that we want computers to be accessible to everybody, so all I have to do is point at the little picture and click on it. That was the concept. I hated it. And then they said, well, the other advantage is you could do more than one thing at a time. I said, well, I can't do more than one thing at a time, so I don't need that. But before you know it, I'm downloading files and processing videos and writing an email, and I'm doing it all at the same time. So I learned to embrace Windows. Well, now Windows 8 comes out, and we get this tiled interface. And I've got 100 programs installed on my computer. And I can't find it because I've got 100 tiles. And they said, well, all you have to do is just, if you want Word, just start typing Word, and there it is. I said, oh, this is just like 1987 all over again. We're back to typing. Whatever happened to pointing on the picture? It feels like 2 steps backwards in my mind. So that's why I don't like 8. It's an interface problem that I have. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about smartphones and tablets, that they're replacing the PCs. And I want to clarify something for you guys. I've written as a freelance journalist, and I know how journalists get paid. And I know how journalists pitch ideas to editors. And I know the more clicks they get, the more that the publisher makes. So when you write an article that says PCs are going away, sales are down, smartphone sales are up, tablet sales are up, PCs are going away. Oh boy, that just becomes the talk of the town. Everybody's clicking on it. Publishers making money on it. But anything you look at on a smartphone or a tablet was created on a PC. These are consuming devices. They're not creation devices. The PC's not going anywhere. If you're not a creator, then you don't need a PC. On the other hand, creating can be something as simple as a daily blog or responding to a lot of emails or a newsletter. And that can be kind of a hassle. I'm sure you've experienced this. I have pretty little hands, I think. And even I have difficulty, such so that and people will chuckle at this because I am such a technical person. But this is my phone. And do you know what it is? It's a phone. It's not a smartphone. It's not a dumb phone. I use it to make and receive phone calls. It has a camera on it, but I don't use that because I have a camera. So, they're trying to converge everything into one device, and so they end up with one thing that doesn't work. Nothing works well. I'd rather have a phone that works well, and a camera that works well, and a GPS that works well, and an MP3 player that works well, than to combine it all into one device with stuff that gets complicated and doesn't work quite as well. That's my experience, and I have to admit that when I see the kids doing this thing, it feels a little like, again, we're taking 2 steps backwards. You can just pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right? I think the next app is going to be a Morse code app. Let's just go all the way back, and then we're going to have a blanket and some fire. It doesn't feel like progress to me. And then I hear my dad, and I think I must be getting old, because I don't understand what the kids are doing. It doesn't make sense. If you want to text me and say you're on your way, that's fine. But if you want to have a conversation, pick up the phone and talk to me. I'm not going to sit here and do this all day. Not to mention the autocorrect. Oh, boy. There are some things I've said that I did not say, that autocorrect said, that I didn't notice. And that creates a whole sort of, remember the show Three's Company with all the misunderstandings? Yeah. So with that, I want to change the subject unless anybody has any questions about anything I've discussed so far. In fact, you know what? Can we get a microphone? Because I've got a camera back here and I want to make sure that the camera and everybody in the room can hear the questions. If you like, sure, stand up. Either way.
In your view, if you're using Windows 7, because 8.1 runs so much faster, and with the fix that you found, would it be worthwhile to go to the 8.1 or just stay with the 7?
Okay, is because 8.1, what you said is because 8.1 is so much faster. I didn't say 8.1 was so much faster. It's a little faster. Okay, you may not even notice it, depending on how you use the computer. Should you go to it? I don't know how you use your computer, but my question is, what will 8.1 do for you to justify the return on the investment of that upgrade? If 7 is not doing something that 8 will do, like you need an app, and 8 runs the apps and 7 doesn't, then you need 8. But if 7's meeting your needs, support for Windows 7 does not expire until 2020. And I've done these so often now, I'm much more comfortable than I used to be. I used to be a nervous wreck coming up here and talking in front of a bunch of people, as you can imagine. And I was at another retirement community, and I was explaining that, you know, you buy a new computer, you throw Windows 7 on it, 2020 is 6 years off, that should be good for life. And I just got this weird energy from the room. And I turned and I said, the life of the computer. Years ago, I'd have been mortified. Now I just roll with it. But no, I mean, at 6 years old, the computer's ready to be replaced at that point. And then they're already working on Windows 9. The average lifespan in an office environment for a workstation is about 3 to 4 years. And in a home environment, depending on your needs, I mean, I've seen people running computers that are 8 or 9 years old. It still meets their needs, and that's fine. But statistically speaking, after 6 years, when support ends for Windows 7, assuming Microsoft doesn't keep extending the support like they tried to end XP twice before. They've extended it at least twice. That's really happening this time. And buying another license for the same computer, like if you have Windows 7, you can upgrade it to Windows 8. In fact, if you have Windows Vista, you can upgrade it to 7 or 8. But if it's XP, just get rid of it because the hardware is it's going to run very, very slow. So again, a difficult question to answer, but ultimately I would just say for the $100 it's going to cost, what are you going to be able to do then that you can't do now? And if you don't know the answer to that, I'd save your money and go out to dinner. Do we have another question? Let's get the microphone. Whoever's going to ask, I just need a microphone.
Okay, my name is Alan Levy. I got to disagree with you about XP machines.
Okay.
I support several nonprofits, and they happily use, as long as it's dual core with 2 gigabytes in it, it runs 7 fine.
Really?
Yep.
You think so?
No problem at all. And
Okay.
I run i5s, but I find dual core will run XP fine for what they need. I didn't say you should use it for Photoshop filters or for videos, but aside from that, it does everything. I'm talking about editing videos with fancy codecs. So I don't think that there's no reason to buy a new machine if you have a dual core with 2 gigs.
I guess if, we come from 2 different perspectives. I'm used to using Core i7s with 16 gigs of RAM and solid state hard drives that boot in 7 seconds and practically read my mind. When I click on something, it happens. I'm a very demanding user. I also deal with the average computer user who doesn't understand what a driver is, wouldn't know how to locate one or install one. And well, Windows 7 does a very good job, much better than XP ever did, of locating drivers for hardware. Where users get in trouble, when they try and upgrade their own machine is in getting the video and the sound and the networking and all that to work, especially the networking, because without the network driver, you can't go and get the other drivers, right? So if you're hiring somebody to do that for you, then the question gets to be, how much is that going to cost? I would charge $125. The operating system's $100. You're at $225. And you can buy a brand new Dell with Windows 7 on it for what, $399 starting price? And the minimum I would use, I would use a minimum of 4 gigs of RAM, a minimum of 2 on XP, a minimum of 4 on Vista 7 or 8. It's not because you have to. You see, on the side of the box, Microsoft likes to put down minimum requirements to run. And I have a problem with these words, because when I hear the word run, I think it means to move quickly. So really, it's the minimum requirements to crawl. But you might argue it doesn't crawl, it actually runs fine. Well, it depends on how you use it. It's absolutely possible. However, XP computers may not be dual-core machines. They may be Pentium 4s. They may be Pentium 3s. So we don't know what, someone could buy a computer 2 years ago and put XP on it, which would be perfectly fine for Windows 7. But in general, if you don't want to mess with all that, you just simply go to the store, buy a new computer that was designed for 7. The drivers are already installed. It's all under warranty again. And it's all about convenience. But yes, what we end up doing is we have time or we have money. Very few of us have both. And for me, it's all about, I don't have time. I would much rather spend a little bit more money, get this done, and move on to something else. Other people say, I've got all day, I'll play around with this, I don't mind. And that gets to be an individual decision. So I understand why you disagree, absolutely. It just depends on your perspective. Can we get a microphone back here? But what you say is completely valid.
Is it worth the upgrade from 8.1 to 8.2, and what is the difference?
There is no 8.2.
I thought that was released, no?
8.1 was just released.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it worth the upgrade? Absolutely, it's free. It's time consuming. It took 4 hours on this laptop. I can't tell you all of the benefits, but I know there are some, but I can't tell you any negatives other than the time. There's no cost. Other questions? Let's get you a mic.
What's the software again for the...
Oh, let me bring up the website, classicshell.net. I meant to do that. This is another problem. If you run the Internet Explorer app, this right here, this is not the same Internet Explorer that's on your desktop. This will not run Java. So for me to run Java, I've got to run this Internet Explorer from the desktop. But it's classicshell.net. It's completely free. Now there's a bunch. There's a Start is Back and Start 8. There's a bunch of them. What's interesting is that when somebody comes out with an add-on for Windows, Microsoft likes to steal it and make it part of Windows, like Partition Magic. Remember that? You don't need it anymore because partitioning software is built into Windows now. That's ironic that Microsoft has taken something out, and all these third-party companies, there's dozens of them have cropped up to provide your Start button back. I think it's a matter of time before Microsoft sees that they need to put that back. But from everything I'm reading online, and Microsoft believes that that would be a step backward, and they want to continue forcing this down our throats, whether we like it or not. And most businesses, in fact, not a single business that I maintain or have worked or been asked to do repair for is running Windows 8. It's only consumers that I've experienced that are. That's not to say there aren't any. I'm just saying I haven't seen any running Windows 8. So if you're a consumer, it's not as big of a deal than if you're a business. So interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that gets addressed in Windows 9. Yes?
Let me find the answer. Okay. Okay.
There we go.
Is there anything else about Windows 8 that is detrimental, other than this insane issue about the start button? In other words, what else about 8 is it that is detrimental?
It's really the interface. It's so different. This,
So
not
how
that,
many
not,
apps, how many programs do you run when you start up your machine in the morning? Through
well,
the day?
okay, that's a good question.
I mean, do the start screen and put up those 5 tiles, and you've got your start screen right there. It's a non-issue.
For many people, you're right. For me, I've got over 100 programs, and at any given time, I may be editing an auto file, I may be creating a video for YouTube, I may be editing a photo that's going to be an image or a thumbnail for that video that I'm creating, I may be downloading or, I was going to say downloading movies. I shouldn't be downloading movies. Let's pretend I didn't say that, but I could be. And running VLC player, which is another great, much better than media player, VLC player. Everybody should have that on their computer as far as I'm concerned. If you download something that says you need to download this codec to watch this video, you'll be calling somebody to remove a virus. So if it doesn't play in VLC player, you don't want to play it. Photoshop, RoboForm, Skype, TeamSpeak, TeamViewer. I could go on and on and on. And my computer never gets turned off. So it's not a question of boot up time. It's a question of me being able to find the program I need to find quickly. And yeah, let's go back to that tiled interface, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Let's go back to this tiled interface. So for me, you could argue that you say, well, Carey, most of the time, through your own admittance, you're using these 5 or 6 applications, and you can just put them right here. Okay, but what about the other 94 that I don't use every day? Well, you just need to start typing the name. Well, we go back to that's defeating the purpose. What I like about the Start menu, and my laptop's nothing like my desktop, because the laptop is only used a couple times a year for these presentations. I really don't have any other use for it. But when I go to my programs, everything is alphabetized, and it's easy for me to find exactly what I'm looking for alphabetically in seconds. I've gotten really, really good at it over the last 15 years. So trying to sell me on this tile interface, I appreciate the effort, but I assure you it's futile. Part of that may be my own ignorance, and I admit that, because I'm avoiding this because I don't like it. I don't like touching a hot stove. I don't hate the stove. I just avoid touching it when it's hot. I don't see any reason to not go with Windows 7 and to put 8 above it. If you're buying a new computer and 7's an option and you're coming from XP and you're an average user, it's an easier learning curve. There are a lot of things about 8 I do like. I like when I copy files. I like to see the transmission speed. I like to see what it's doing. 7 hides that. I don't like that. So I throw another program on called TerraCopy, which does give me the information I want, but that's me being a control freak wanting to know all this information. So there are things about 8 I like. I don't want to make it out like 8 is a disaster, it should be avoided. It's not as bad as people say it is. But if you gave me a choice on a new computer to 7 or 8, I will pick 7. And knowing that 7 expires in 6 years, what do I got to worry about? Now, I suppose if apps take off, which Microsoft hopes they do, I'll be unable to run those apps until I go to Windows 8. And they're trying to, just like a smartphone, they're trying to tie these 2 types of interfaces together, smartphone apps and your desktop interface. And we'll see how that plays out. And if it plays out, well, we'll be talking about apps in future meetings. But right now, apps, I can't think of a single app that I don't have on my computer that I need.
I have a question.
I hear somebody. Oh, all the way in the back here?
1, 2.
I have a question. I went to the store with the money in my hand to buy Microsoft 7.
Yes.
Couldn't find one. There
That's
was
right.
not one in the store anywhere. I went to 3 other stores. They all said the same thing.
Microsoft has stopped selling Windows 7 on the retail level. PC builders like myself, well, you don't have to be a PC builder, but I claim to be, can buy what's called an OEM copy of Windows 7. OEM simply means Microsoft will not provide any support and it won't come in a retail box. HP has brought back Windows 7 due to customer demand for it. So you can go online and order a computer and save the sales tax in many cases, which can be quite a bit of money. Backed by popular demand, Windows 7. And that's a big slap in the face to Microsoft. But HP's in the business to make money. They don't care. So they're out there. I don't think you need to be afraid of Windows 8. I think when you put Classic Shell on it, or Start is back, or Start 8, or any of those applications that bring your Start menu back and it boots directly to the desktop, I think it's not that big of a deal. But if you really want Windows 7, you can always have a computer custom made, usually competitively priced. I do that myself. I don't build cheap $400 computers, but I also don't try and sell you a gold-plated computer either. I try and, depending on when you ask me, the prices fluctuate like gasoline prices. 1 week it's this, 1 week it's that. But they're generally around the $800 range for a computer that's going to last you, like I said, at least the life of Windows 7, which is through 2020. And then I guarantee the computers for a year. And then, when you have a problem, you call the person who made it. I mean, I'm not really here to sell that. I mean, I'm really not here to sell you anything, but just information, just planting a seed. On the other hand, if you're comfortable and you have a good experience with the big PC makers like Dell and HP, I don't see any reason to avoid Windows 8 unless you have a specific need, such as an office, where you have to log into a domain controller and things like that, where 8 just kind of seems to be lacking. But yes, to buy a retail box copy of Windows 7 is no longer available in the stores. So who's got the mic?
Right here.
Right here, okay.
Windows 8.1. I went to an 8.1 because I run a computerized quilting machine. And
A computerized
quilting
quilting.
machine.
Yeah, sure.
And the company that makes the machine has gone to 8.1 because of the touch system.
Okay,
The tiles on the touch system. And
Yeah.
That, what I understood was where Microsoft was heading down, was all to the touch system rather than the
pointing and clicking.
keyboard.
That's right. Microsoft went there, but HP and Dell and the makers didn't. They said the screens cost too much money and the consumers aren't going to pay that much for a laptop. For us to sell the laptops, we have to remove those touch screens to bring those prices back down so people will buy our equipment. So although the operating system is ready for it, the manufacturers didn't necessarily comply because of sales. So yes, every tablet is touch and smartphones are all touch, but not every laptop is. They're starting to become more popular. And depending on the size of the laptop screen, that touch can be easy or it can be frustrating. And again, it just gets to be something to get used to. But yes, that gets back to tying together the way we use our smartphones and the way we use our desktops, where we're doing these swipes and these pinches. That's where they're trying to go with it. The hardware manufacturers feel like Microsoft set them up to fail by forcing this on them and increasing their cost, and then diminishing their sales as a result. And it's also a reason why you see that advertisement. Yes?
Basically a two-part question. Some of us don't even understand what you mean by apps for a desktop. And if you're thinking of apps in the way apps are seen on a so-called smartphone, and you have a screen, just a monitor that's maybe 3 or 4 years old, you really can't use that as a touch screen, can you?
You'd have to replace the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, if you go to 8.1, in order to use all its capabilities, you've really got to change an awful lot of hardware as well as the software.
You ever seen a Ferrari on the freeway?
Taillights.
You can't really use a Ferrari on the freeway. You know what I mean? It's a nice car, and it is going to get you from point A to point B. But, you know, especially like in rush hour, you know, it's not going any faster than the car in front of it. Because you can't take full advantage of Windows 8, it does give you something to grow into should you decide later. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to have the touchscreen today. Maybe you'll get it next year. Maybe the prices will be cheaper and it'll come down and the screens will get bigger and brighter and crisper. And when you do that, you'll already be ready for it. So in the sense that maybe you don't have a track to run your Ferrari on, but one day you're going to take it to the track and then you can open it up. It's ready for that. And in the meantime, you can still utilize it. You know, it's not just a race car. You know, there are race cars you can't drive on the street. So applications, and it is confusing, and I'm not even sure I can explain it. And I don't know that I've ever been put in that position before to say, what's the difference between an application and software, a program, applications and programs? Does somebody here have an explanation on how they would? I'd like to hear it.
Applications.
Let's grab the mic, please.
Sorry about that. Applications run in the start screen. Programs run in the desktop.
But what's the difference?
How you get out of them.
How do you get out of an app?
How do you get out of an app? You grab it to the top and grab it to the bottom of the screen.
Doesn't that just minimize it?
No, it dumps it.
I was told by a developer Microsoft requires all app developers to freeze their apps after 5 seconds of non-use. That's a requirement from Microsoft. Apps must freeze after 5 seconds of non-use. Not necessarily minimize, but freeze to free up resources. And I know there's a limit to how many apps you can run at any given time. I can run a number of programs.
Apps don't have the old-fashioned or the standard, what everybody has been used to looking at. Notice the upper right-hand corner. That is a program.
Right, because it's got an X. I can close it.
Apps do not have that.
That's right. I thought I was pulling up the app of IE, but I'm trying to find another app I can run to demonstrate it. The Windows Store would probably be a good one, wouldn't it?
Probably.
The Marketplace, where's that?
I saw it.
It's in here. Right up here.
There it is.
Now, if you're used to closing programs when you're, yeah, thank you. Just type store. You're absolutely right. She's right. Do you know how frustrated I was the first time I did this and I couldn't figure out how to close this? I want to shut it down.
Read the owner's manual.
Oh. RTFM. I'll let you look that up. Read the freaking manual is the polite way. I'm impatient. If you ever see my videos on how to build a computer, one of the first things you see me do is when I unbox a piece of hardware is I grab that instruction manual and I throw it at the camera. I'm so sick and tired of instructions that say never to press twice, flexible. What? I don't know. Whoever translated it, I guess, has the whole series of Shogun, and that qualified them to translate. I don't know. But I've read too many manuals that come from basically Asia that have words I understand but not in the right order. And it makes for some pretty funny reading, but often fairly useless. Now, the big name motherboard manufacturers like ASUS and Gigabyte, their manuals are pretty good, but even still, sometimes those manuals aren't that good. But as long as we have Google, we can pretty much find any answer to any. I found a pill on the floor once, and I picked it up, and I didn't recognize this pill. So I typed it in, there's little numbers on the pill, typed in small pink pill 581, and it came up as a thyroid medication. I don't have thyroid medication. My mother does, and I called her. I don't know, is this an $8 pill? Do I flush it down the toilet, or do you just, 5-second rule, it's still good? Depends on how much the pill is. Turns out, call my mom, pills are cheap, just throw it away. I wouldn't have known what that was without Google. And there wasn't a manual. So I'm not a fan of manuals. I don't learn very well through reading. When I wrote my book, one of the things I wanted to, that is taking a long time. I really wish I could close that. Anyway, there's,
Shut the computer.
can I swipe with my mouse? No? No, this is not it. This computer came with Vista originally. Well, I still don't know how to close it. All right. I used to work on cars. When I was a kid, I had to. I had a 1970 AMC Hornet. And I was happy to have it. Now, I was born in 1968. This car was a 1970. So I was 16 years old, so that would have put it in 1984. Car had 300,000 miles on it. Reverse and neutral were the same. So I had to park it on an incline where I could roll it out, or park it where I could drive straight out, or I had to open the driver's door and push it out with my foot, but I was happy to have it. And it was learn how to fix it or take the bus. That's what it took for me to figure out what a carburetor and an alternator and a radiator all were and what they did through necessity. And I remember I got a Haynes, I think it was Haynes, could have been Chilton's, but I want to say it was a Haynes car repair manual. And I don't know what I was trying to fix, bless you. I don't know what I was trying to fix, but I remember the instructions, because the instructions, I'm a very literal, OCD, almost Asperger's kind of guy, okay? That's the way I am. And the instructions said, remove the left nut torque converter bolt from the bell housing. And the first thing that entered my mind was, what side of the car is the left side? Is that the driver's side or the passenger side? And why couldn't they have just said driver's side or passenger side? Why did it say right or left? And if I'm under the car sideways, is it the front or the back? What is a torque converter bolt and what does a bell housing look like? So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip the page and I'm going to read the installation instructions and do those backwards. And I kid you not, I am not making this up. I flipped the page and the installation instructions are one line. Installation is opposite of removal. When I tell you I'm not a fan of manuals, it's from experience. But yes, there's no harm in reading the manual. Next question?
Could we get back to a simple, basic question?
I would love nothing more.
How do you do a screen print?
Well, typically on a keyboard you have a screen print button.
I know it doesn't work.
Well,
That's the way I used to do it.
what does it mean to take a screen? Jimmy Fallon of The Tonight Show does a thing called a screen grab now, where people can take a picture of their computer screen of something they think is funny, and they make a whole skit out of that, a regular skit once a week, where he flips through these funny screen grabs. And what we want to do is we want to say, okay, I like this. Well, this isn't a good example because I'm in an app. I got to get out of the app.
I just want to print what's showing on the screen.
Yeah, you want to print everything on your screen. Okay, so I haven't tried this in Windows 7, so maybe you're showing me something that's new to me, but let me go to my desktop and let's go to, I don't know, we'll just go to any application. This is good. And I'm going to hit my print screen button, which I've just done. Now, apparently nothing's happened. But if you go to the Paint program, which is in Accessories, do I have Accessories? Do I have Paint? Why don't I just type Paint? Ah, thank you. There's Paint. And when Paint loads, I should be able to just paste and get a picture of that screen. That's the way I've always done it in XP. That's how I've done it in 7. It apparently works just the same in 8.
what command do you give the printer?
File print. And if it's not fitting to the page, you can save this as a graphics file and then open it up in Windows Picture Viewer, and then you can tell it how you want it to print that way. If you want it to 5:7 or full screen, you may have to save the file first. Google Chrome is much better if it's a website you're trying to print than Internet Explorer is, in my experience. But the print screen button, sometimes you have to hit a function key depending on your keyboard. So the print screen button may function as two different things. And you may have to hit function in print screen. And you can tell by the color of the word print screen. If print screen is blue and you've got a button called FN that's blue, that means that anything in blue, you have to push the FN button for that function. Otherwise, it defaults to the other function. That way you don't have 200 keys, you only have 100 keys. Just like you don't have a capital A and a lowercase a, you hold Shift and A to get the uppercase A. You may have a numeric keypad as part of your keyboard, and you have to hit the numlock button, and then the letters on the right side of the keyboard become the numbers that are written just below them. It just depends on the computer.
I'm just going to mention that buying Windows 7, D&H in New York sells many computers with Windows 7 today.
B&H does?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just free shipping, no tax, no sales tax.
B&H? Yeah, I know them for cameras, but yeah, sure. Can we get a microphone over here? Who's,
I
let me,
just wanted to tell you, I have Microsoft 7, and if I want to print the page that I'm seeing right there, I just hit Control P and it does it.
yeah, but that doesn't work on your desktop.
Yes, it does.
I think if you were to be on your, if you were to go to your desktop,
That's what I use.
I think you're using it in Internet Explorer or you're using it in Word. But if you're on your desktop and you hit Control P, nothing happens. I can't print. If I want a picture, here's a joke we used to do. We used to check if somebody was worth their weight. Back in the day, we would open the control panel and we would hit Alt print screen. So the difference between print screen and Alt print screen is Alt print screen only captures the window that's in focus. Then we would go into Paint, right? So let's go back into Paint, which was Windows Accessories, and then Paint, and then we'll paste that, and then we're going to save it. So File, Save As, and I'm going to just make it a JPEG image here. Is that an option? JPEG, yeah. And we're just going to call this Control Panel. I know some of you know where I'm going with this, so shh. Then I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to personalize my screen, and I want to select my desktop background to be the picture I just saved. So I've got to browse to my Pictures folder, which should be right in here somewhere. Libraries, Pictures. And in Pictures, I should see the control panel picture. And I don't want it to be stretched out like that. I want it to just be, no, I don't want it to fit. I just want it to be centered. And we'll close that. Now, support call comes in and says, I cannot close my control panel. Right? And nothing on it works. Whenever I click on anything, nothing happens and I can't close it. That's because it's not the control panel, it's a picture of the control panel. Now that's done with a screen grab. If I hit Control P right now, I cannot print this. It will not print.
Well, I can understand that, but I'm talking about if you're into something
Yes.
and you want to print something, you can go ahead and hit
Control P, Control P is the same as going to File and Print. But if you don't have the option of File, because it doesn't exist on your desktop, then there's no Control P. So Control P is a shortcut. And again, you're not getting your whole screen. Even then, like if you're in Internet Explorer or Word, you're getting the contents, but you're not getting the border and the controls. Does that make sense? So anyway, hope that clarifies that. Now, somebody over here had a microphone. Yeah.
Back Back when I had Windows 95 and 98 and even XP, every couple of years I would end up, because the computer would slow down, things would get garbaged up, I would do a clean reinstall. My wife's computer right now, which has got System 7, is also doing the same thing. Do you have to do a clean reinstall on System 7 periodically also?
So the word tech is to be a computer technician is a self-proclaimed position. So humor me and say you're a computer tech. You are one. You're as much a one as I am. Anybody can tell you I can fix any problem, most problems, by just simply wiping and reinstalling. That to me is not a fix. That's like, I'm going to kill you and wait for you to be reincarnated, and you're going to be, your cancer will be gone. I don't like that. As somebody who repairs something, it bugs me. I would much rather find the cause of the problem because I learn from that. And then the next time I see it, you're going to think I'm really smart because you didn't see me struggle for a week banging my head against the wall trying to figure it out. But because I banged my head against the wall to figure it out, the School of Hard Knocks, it's a good school, but the tuition can be kind of high. But those lessons stay with me that way. That's how I learn. When I wipe and we call that a nuke and a pave. We do a nuke and pave. And sometimes it's necessary. But on Windows 7, it really shouldn't be, because for the most part, unless you have a really bad virus infection, the registry and temp files don't log 7 down the way they did in XP. In fact, that these system cleaners like CCleaner and Glary Utilities, the magazines have done the tests and they've shown they do not improve the performance of these computers at all. If they improve them, it's so minuscule, it's not worth the time and effort that you have to put into it. It does free up some real estate on your desk, on your hard drive. Say if you've got a solid state drive and you've got a gig of temp files, it's worth getting that gig back. But as far as cleaning the registry, the only thing it should be removing are items that it's ignoring anyway. And it's so efficient that ultimately it's more about a placebo effect that you feel good that you do it. So I still do it. I still run CCleaner, and I feel good about it because it's not hurting anything. But I can't tell you my system runs any faster, but the justification I have behind it goes back to a little OCD and a little bit of what's the harm. I also change the oil in my car every 3,000 miles, whether it needs it or not. Some people go 4,500, some people go 6,000. It's just my experience with it. My car doesn't seem to run any better as a result if I wait to 4,000 miles to change it. With Windows 7, it really should not be necessary to ever have to wipe it and reinstall it. It really shouldn't, unless there's some kind of an infection that occurred that is very difficult to remove. Most infections can be removed fine, but every once in a while you get one where the only option is really to wipe it and reinstall it. But as far as just slowing down over time, that just should not happen with Windows 7. Oh, I have no doubt that programs have been installed that are causing it to slow down. But the idea is to find what programs are causing that, what's causing that slowdown. I don't believe the slowdown is Windows 7. I believe it's something you've loaded onto it. The camel's got so much stuff on its back, it's moving so slow, you need to take some of that stuff off of its back so it doesn't have as much of a workload. So it may be that an application that you've installed has created a process that is consuming the memory that you have or the process that you have. That would be the way I would look at it. I would look at it to find what is it that's causing the slowdown specifically, not just wipe the whole thing out and start over.
How?
Well, that comes from, it's nothing I can explain quickly here on stage, but it is a process of elimination by simply looking at, for example, everything that's starting with msconfig and unchecking items and then checking them one at a time. Well, first of all, unchecking all of them to see if that solves the problem. If it does, one of those items or more is causing that problem. You start checking them one at a time, restart the computer, repeat that process. If removing all those items doesn't solve it, looking at a program like AutoRuns that will show you all the hidden things that are running. Start unchecking all of those and see if that improves it. the health of the hard drive. When hard drives start to fail, one of the symptoms is that the computer will appear to run slower. And I use a program called Crystal Disk Info, which is free, and it'll show you how many hours are on your drive, the health status of the drive. I'll bring that up here. And there's a portable version, so you don't have to install that program. And again, that's called Crystal Disk Info. And if I just type it in here, Crystal Disk Info, the first link that pops up is Crystal Mark. That's the one we want. And there's an installation version and a portable version. This is updated every couple of weeks. And it's from Japan, so there's a couple different language versions. I get the English portable version. I download and run it, and it tells me the health status of my drive. And like I said, how many times the drive's been powered on, how many hours of use, and if the drive is good, it'll be a big blue good symbol. And if it's bad, it'll be red and bad, or if it's failing, it'll be yellow and caution. So there's probably at least 2 of you in this room that have a drive that's in caution mode and you don't even know it. And that's using the smart data on the drive, SMART, the self-monitoring and reporting technology that's been part of hard drives for some time. How are we on time? Are we, really? It seems like I've been up
We have
here,
time for one more question.
I feel like I've been up here 10 minutes. This is great, okay. Well, who's got the last question here? We've got somebody with a mic?
I got the mic.
Oh, go.
I got it
Now you
now.
got the mic.
Okay.
Okay, I got just 2 questions. I have an HP laptop running 8.1 with classic shell on it, Windows 7 desktop, runs great.
Mhm.
It came with 8 gig of memory. I want to upgrade it to 16 gig.
Mhm.
And it's DDR3 memory. Can I just go to Amazon and just pick any DDR3 memory?
No. You need to make sure the laptop is capable of accepting,
It is.
and you need to know what the speed of the memory is you have now. So is it DDR333 or, there's a couple different ratings.
It is a DDR.
If it's DDR3 1600, DDR3 2400, DDR3,
Okay.
right? So one of the ways you can do that is if you go to kingston.com, because they sell memory, here's what I would do. So if you brought me your laptop and you said, I want to upgrade the memory, what memory would I need? I would click search by system device, and then I would enter the make and the model, and then it'll tell you what your memory options are for that specific make and model. Then I could go to Amazon with that information.
Gotcha.
It seems kind of cruel since they're trying to sell, but it's no different than looking at a store at something
Well,
and you
know
feel it and
Amazon
touch it.
Parts on your videos, you put all the parts down.
I do.
Parts list. Second question, it has an i3 processor on it.
Yeah.
And I might down the road want to upgrade to an i5.
Not in a laptop.
Not a laptop?
Got to buy that chip is soldered onto the main board, so that's not an option. And 16 gigs in an i3, those 2 things don't really go together.
Really?
Yeah, I mean you've got the lowest end processor in the most amount of memory. The more memory you add, the more speed you add. So I always recommend the i5 since the i3 is. The reason Intel, and I'm going to try and make this quick, but if you're familiar with BMWs, they have the 3 Series BMW, which is the entry-level car. They have the 5 Series, which is the mid-level car, and the 7 Series, which is the luxury car. And so Intel stole those. I guess Intel asked for permission, and BMW said no, but they did it anyway. And then BMW's competition is Audi. So Audi, instead of having a BMW 3, there's an Audi A4. And instead of having a BMW 5, there's an Audi A6. And instead of having a BMW 7, there's an Audi A8. And you can almost add 5 zeros after whatever that number is if you want the base price of that car, okay? So Intel did the same thing. When you see an i3 processor, that's your entry level, although they do have the Celeron, which is below that, which would be like Mini Cooper is to BMW. So that's owned by BMW. It's the same manufacturer. So your i3, your i5. So I always recommend the i5 because it seems like a good mid-ground. But the manufacturers, they want to hit that price point. And the way they hit that price point is by reducing the processor strength and by reducing the amount of memory. And I don't know if you'll receive any benefit from adding 16 gigs of RAM. Unless you're doing heavy photo editing or video editing, you may not, or if you're opening like 15 applications at the same time, you may notice no difference whatsoever. Just be warned. 16 gigs of memory on a laptop will probably set you back about $100.
You know, in mainframe days, there's no memory like real memory.
I'm not quite sure I understand that, but I'll agree.
Real memory has, as opposed to virtual memory.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Virtual memory is much, much slower because it's writing to your hard drive. But if you've got 8 gigs of RAM or more, you should be able to safely turn your swap file off. You shouldn't even need it.
Really?
Yep, just go in there, you go into your system properties in your control panel, go to advanced, go to performance, click on the swap file or virtual memory tab, and just turn it off. And it'll warn you if you turn it off, bad things might happen. But for most people with 8 gigs or more, you can turn that swap file off. And if your computer crashes, turn it back on again. And everybody that I've turned it off for, in other words, it's reversible. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm out of time. Thank you so much. Thanks for your participation, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really
I do have business cards up here if anybody would like one. I don't know where to put them. We can pass them around. How about that? Thanks again.
That'd be good.